On today's show, the Houston Rockets drop a nail-biter in Memphis to the Grizzlies. Late game execution was the problem in this one. What happened in the final 5 minutes for the Rockets to let go of the rope and lose this game? Plus, Alperen Sengun earns his All-Star selection and so much more. It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Thursdays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Drop us a comment while you're there. Tell me what you think went wrong in the final 5 minutes of this game for the Rockets to lose 120-119 to the Grizzlies, or just do a drive-by, say go Rockets, helps us out a ton. Also subscribe to the daily Locked On Rockets newsletter, would sincerely appreciate that. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head on over to FanDuel.com to get started. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym, after a frustrating loss to the Grizzlies, a game that they should have won. Appreciate you guys for being everydayers. Look, this game is frustrating. This loss is especially frustrating because, look, first off, neither team was healthy. No Ja Morant, still no Marcus Smart, Vince Williams Jr. for the Grizzlies. On the Rocket side of things, they were missing their freshly anointed All-Star in Alperen Sengun, and also still no Jabari Smith Jr. So neither team at 100%. But the Rockets were like firmly in control of this game, right? They had a 10-point lead at halftime. Grizzlies did open up with an 8-0 run in this, at the top of that third quarter to basically turn it into a game again, and then they won that third quarter 36-30. But the Rockets still were very much in control of this game. And then the Rockets had an 8-point lead, 115-107, with just under 5 minutes left to play. And stop me if you've heard this one before, but the Rockets just completely unraveling down the stretch of a game, unable to put any points on the board. And while they were good enough to win this game defensively, you look at giving up 120 points, but they even gave themselves a chance. Like, they still had one final offensive possession with 8 seconds left on the clock to go for yet another game winner in the span of a week, right? They had a game winner against Boston. You had a chance here against the Grizzlies, but it just came down to piss poor late game execution. Just looking at it in its entirety, in the final 5 minutes of this game, the Rockets went 1 for 12 shooting from the floor. And the one basket that they did make wasn't even like a well-designed basket. It was a Tari Eason putback. Like, that was literally like he cleaned up an ugly basket. He cleaned up a miss. So 1 for 12 shooting and 3 turnovers in the final 5 minutes of the game. That is not a winning recipe for success. Dillon Brooks 0 for 2. Ime Thompson 0 for 1. Jalen Green 0 for 3. But he did have the 2 free throws. So the Rockets they put up 4 points. Just 4 points on the board in the final 5 minutes. Jalen Green accounted for 2 of them. Tari Eason had the other 2 on that putback attempt. But Jalen Green 0 for 3 from the floor. Fred VanVleet 0 of 4. Tari 1 of 2. And it's just like, I could go line by line and point out just how frustrating each and every one of these late game possessions, let's work our way backwards. Final possession of the game. It basically was drawn up to be identical to what happened in Boston, right? Where Ime drew up the play for Ime Thompson to attack and try and get downhill and finish and get to his spot on the floor. And give a lot of credit to Brandon Clark, right? He D'd it up perfectly, and Ime Thompson had no choice but to kick the pass back out to Fred VanVleet, and then Fred had to settle. He had to hoist to get a shot up, and it was a bad little kind of like sidestep, step back 3. And that's what the Rockets got on their final offensive possession, right? And it's frustrating because, like, really, there's nothing else. I understand, give it to your best player, or give it to the guy that you trust in that moment to go get you a bucket, and that's what happened against Boston, and it was a win, so it was exciting and fun. But, like, I don't know, was there nothing more that could have been done? Could you not have run, like, I know 8 seconds isn't a ton of time, but could you have not given a man like a screen, like do some, like a 4-1 pick and roll or something and get Fred to screen him really quick and try and get something. I don't know. I feel like a lot more could have been done from a schematic perspective to give the Rockets some better looks down the stretch. The second to last offensive possession was a Fred VanVleet step back three. And like, is that realistically the best thing you could have come up with in that moment? Nothing downhill towards the rim. Like you couldn't have come up with, you had a chance, you had a timeout. You could have, subbed in whoever you wanted. You could have put in Steven Adams and had like a Jalen Green, Steven Adams pick and roll, get one of those bone crushing, Steven Adams screens out there to free up Jalen to let him get downhill and, either give him a chance to finish at the rim or get to his mid range or kick it out for a shooter. Or even if he gets to the rim and he misses, then you get Steven Adams trying to clean up an offensive putback, which he was a monster on the offensive glass this game. Couple possessions before that, Fred VanVleet with just an absolutely awful turnover. He was, he basically got pushed to the floor kind of, and it really wasn't a foul. He just got kind of bodied defensively and then he just kind of fell down and he was just like looking for a foul call, a very uncharacteristic turnover for Fred VanVleet. And then this happened a few times in the fourth quarter, but with about a minute and a half left, Jalen Green had a drive to the rim where he got the switch on Brandon Clark. And he beat Brandon Clark. A great start to the possession. You get the switch on the big man that you want. You're hunting him. You attack. But then he drove into like 4 Grizzlies defenders. Like they literally just collapsed everything on top of him. And he had a couple outlets. Like it was, the spacing wasn't perfect and it was kind of bad because you had like Jayshawn Tate and Ime Thompson occupying the same like kind of dunker spot on the floor. Tari Eason was in the weak side corner and Luke Kennard was the only Grizzly that didn't collapse in the play. So like, maybe he didn't have like that pass available to him, but he definitely had Fred VanVleet in the weak side corner. Fred would have had a wide open three if Jalen had just kicked it back out to the left-hand side. But instead he drove into 4 Grizzlies defenders and tried to finish up through them and it ended poorly, right? And that was like the third or fourth time that Jalen had a drive in that fourth quarter that ended with him driving into way too much traffic, trying to do too much with it, right? So there were just a bunch of those bad possessions late. And just over the course of that entire 5-minute stretch, the Rockets did have some good looks at it. To go 1 for 12 shooting is just like a really like frigid cold stretch from the floor. If the Rockets hit even 1 or 2 of those shots, right, we're talking about a win instead of a loss. Even for example, case in point, Ime Thompson, his one missed shot that he had there in the clutch time minutes was an attempted alley-oop like layup attempt in transition from Dillon Brooks, where DB caught the outlet pass, and then Ime Thompson was streaking, and he threw it to him at the rim. And rather than just like catching the ball and coming down with it and then going straight back up with that like super quick second jump that he has, he was barreling down the court going 100 miles an hour, and he tried to catch the ball and then like in one motion get it up off the glass, and he was just moving too fast. Right? There was only one Grizzlies defender that was trying to contest the play, and that same defender was barreling down the court to try and stop him in. If he catches that pass, comes down with it, and goes right back up, it's a dunk or an easy layup, rather than trying to do it all in one motion. And that would have made it 117, 112 with only a little bit left to play after that. So, I don't know. It just felt like a lot of blown opportunities by the Rockets, some poor turnovers, and you couple that with the shot making of the Grizzlies. They went on that, again, it was a 13-4 run to close out the game. Rockets had no answer for Jaren Jackson Jr. It's such a mismatch problem when you look at the way that the Grizzlies start that double big lineup of Zach Edey, Jaren Jackson Jr. The Rockets had to guard Triple J with Dillon Brooks for a majority of this game. And there at the end of the game, with Triple J being the sole big on the floor, there were stretches where Steven Adams had to try and guard Triple J, and like that's a mismatch as well. Like that's what Triple J provides, is he's often too big and too strong for traditional fours or wings to guard him, and he's too fast for fives to guard him. So he's kind of a mismatch nightmare, and he had it going in those final 5 minutes. He went 3 for 3 from the floor, scored 9 points, hit 3 free throws, like just. Rockets had zero answer for trying to slow down Triple J down the stretch of this game. So you hat tip to the Grizzlies. They closed this one out. They had the execution. They had the shot making. They had their star player that they could rely on. And for the Rockets, they didn't get anything. They didn't get what they needed from Jalen Green to close out the game. They didn't get what they needed from Fred VanVleet, who is supposed to be their calming, steadying hand to get them into good sets and generate high quality offense. They didn't get anything out of him. Yeah, it was just disappointing because they had this game kind of won. They just needed they gotten a couple more buckets, right, in those final 5 minutes, then they would have had just enough to eke out a win. Instead, Grizzlies secure the final matchup here, the fourth and final game between these two teams. So we'll see. Maybe they'll see the Grizzlies again at some point in the postseason. But coming up, I want to talk about some of the other elements from this game. Dillon Brooks' defense was a pretty substantial concern in this one. Pardon me. Ime Thompson with some good and bad play offensively. Kind of want to unpack his night and talk about some of the other stretches of this game in particular. Plus, we got to get to Alperen Sengun's All-Star, not candidacy. I guess he made it, right? He made it to the All-Star team. We'll talk about that and a few other things. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Intuit TurboTax. Look, taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives you your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, and no more worries. Now, this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right. One thing that I wanted to highlight here that was a pretty substantial issue, and I think this goes into some of the schematic issues with this loss. I kind of firmly want to put this loss on Ime Udoka. I do. There were so many questionable decisions made over the course of this game, and none bigger to me than the continued assertion of allowing Dillon Brooks to be your go-to defender on Triple J, especially because Dillon has struggled guarding Triple J in the past. Like, it's just, he's giving up so much in that matchup. He's giving up height, he's giving up length, he's giving up size. I understand that DB is supposed to be your ace defender, your tone-setting defender, and I'm not trying to slam DB for this, but especially down the stretch when you did have Tari Eason on the floor, like, why not put Tari on Triple J? Why not have Tari guarding Triple J? He's bigger. He's probably stronger than Dillon Brooks. That might be a wash. But he's got better length than Dillon Brooks. I don't know. I felt like Jaren Jackson Jr., despite only scoring 21 points and going 7 of 15 from the floor, like, especially late in the game, why not mix it up? Or why not, double team him, right? Get the ball out of his hands, right? Force somebody else on the team to beat you, because clearly you didn't have an answer for slowing down Triple J at the end. And by extension, I don't know if this was because DB was exhausted from guarding Triple J. I don't know if it was because of the foul trouble that he was dealing with in the game, but this was a really bad defensive performance from Dillon Brooks. Like, he had so many blown defensive possessions where he just gave up and it resulted in so many wide open buckets. Like, he was directly responsible for 2 of the 3 3-pointers that Luke Kennard hit in this game. He had one moment where Ime Thompson was guarding Luke Kennard, and they were like running, like, not quite like a floppy action because it wasn't baseline to baseline, but it was like a curl action through the paint. And Ime was guarding Luke Kennard and then switched onto Dillon's man, who was running to the opposite wing. And Ime, you could hear it. It picked up on the basket. Ime was calling out, DB, switch. Like, he was calling the switch. And Dillon just wasn't paying attention. And it led to a wide open Luke Kennard 3. And then he had another one of those blown coverages later in the fourth quarter. And then he had he let Desmond Bane just walk in a layup for 2 late in the game. Like, there were so many frustrating moments where you saw DB, who's supposed to be your best defender. He's not. It's Ime Thompson now, and has been for a while. But he's supposed to be like your tone setter. He's supposed to be one of the leaders on the floor. And I just felt like just routinely he was getting burned in this game. And at one point, I kind of thought to myself, I was like, are the Grizzlies hunting Dillon Brooks? Because it kind of felt like there were multiple possessions in a row where they just kept going at Dillon Brooks. And I don't know if it was just luck of the draw. I don't know if it's just how the Rockets were switching, and it just so happened that these possessions wound up with DB being the primary defender on the guy who wound up scoring the basketball. But correct me if I'm wrong. Like, I kind of felt like the Grizzlies were maybe hunting Dillon Brooks a little bit defensively. So like he had a good enough overall offensive game, 22 points, 9 of 17 shooting, but it really felt like he killed the Rockets on the defensive side of things. And the other thing that really hurt them in this game was not having a 5-man that could really navigate at the level of the screen, right? Because that's not how Steven Adams defends. He's not a guy that you want out there at the level of the screen, blitzing ball handlers, providing that pressure on the perimeter. That's not his forte as a defender. He's going to pretty much almost more or less exclusively play like in a pseudo drop coverage. Like he's going to extend, a little bit out past the paint, but not by much. And then same thing with Jock Landale. Like Jock is not a very mobile big that you want chasing guys around on the perimeter. And that's where they really missed Alperen Sengun. They did, having him out there and part of his defensive growth this season has been his ability to kind of change up his coverages and provide some of that pressure, especially in late game situations, blitzing star players, that kind of thing. And they just didn't have that luxury in this game. So not to say that, again, like Adams had a really strong game and Jock Landale himself had a strong game in his own right. Jock with 8 points, 3 rebounds, couple assists and a steal. And then Steven Adams with 11 points, 10 boards, 7 of them coming on the offensive glass, 3 assists. Like, the 5 still put in some work in this game, but it would have been easier for the Rockets to execute some things, especially defensively down the stretch, if they had a more versatile option at that 5 spot, which you've got your versatile 5 option sitting on the bench, right? Sengun is quite a bit more capable defensively than Adams and Landale at guarding at the level of the screen. And then Jabari is your switch everything 5 for when you want to play like a quote unquote small ball lineup. So that was frustrating. I will say kind of a mixed bag, and in the same light as I'll just mention this really quick. Steven Adams did an incredible job on the offensive glass, and so did Tari Eason. Tari with 13 points, 12 rebounds, multiple putbacks offensively. The Rockets had, I believe it was 30 second chance points in this game, which was great, just giving them a chance, just giving them opportunities to stick with it, to stay in the game, despite, some of the poor execution offensively. Those two guys cleaned up a lot. And they were a handful for the Grizzlies to deal with. So even when you have an interior of Zach Edey and Triple J and then Brandon Clark coming off the bench, Tari and Adams did a really good job fighting for loose balls and everything. I will say kind of a mixed bag for Ime Thompson because he had a good game, 21 points, 7 boards, 4 assists, a steal, 4 blocks. They took one away. He had 5 blocks at one point during the actual game. He had so many just weak side shot, like block shot moments where he just came over. Like the first 3 blocks he had in the game he like snuck up behind the defender and just swatted it. And then he had one where he blocked Zach Edey at the rim. And it was a 2-handed block. He literally timed the jump and got up and blocked Zach Edey with one hand and then came over the top with the second hand. Like it was a 2-armed block shot. It was kind of ridiculous. Offensively though, Ime missed a lot of layups around the rim. Like he missed a ton of gimmies. And that was by extension, that was like a team-wide issue where the Rockets missed what felt like a lot of shots like that should have gone in. It's like Steven Adams had a wide open dunk that he just missed, right? Where like you just ball hit back iron or something and went flying. Ime missed multiple layups after doing like all the hard work, right? Beating the defender, getting to his Euro step, getting right there at the rim, and then just like a little bit, like he had one that went off the back iron where he beat the, transition layup, got all the way to the rim, beat Desmond Bane, and then just right off the back iron, barely misses it. He had a couple that he missed off the glass. And so, you look at his game, he was, 21 points, but on 7 of 15 shooting, right? If he hits 2 or 3 more of those layups, the easy ones that he should have hit, then, he's the Rockets' leading scorer. And again, we're talking about a win instead of a loss. So there were just, at the margins, this was a game where like the room for error was kind of razor thin with, again, these two teams being very evenly matched from a production standpoint. Even though, Rockets did outshoot the Grizzlies considerably from long distance. They were by the end of the game, they were plus 12 from 3-point land. They hit 13 threes. Grizzlies only hit 9 threes, but Grizzlies were way better on the interior, shooting 51.6% overall. to just 43.3% overall for the Rockets. Again, a lot of missed shots in and around the rim. Jalen Green was another one of those. Like, Jalen had a really strong overall game, 25 points, 5 of 10 from downtown, but just 8 of 21 overall. So inside the arc, Jalen Green just 3 for 11 shooting from inside the arc. And he had some shots at the rim that, probably just either just rolled off iron or again, the drives where he went in and tried to attack through way too many defenders. So, I don't think this isn't a game where you need to overreact. I don't think the Grizzlies figured anything out new about how to guard the Rockets or, how to contain them or, this is how you beat the Rockets. This is their kryptonite or anything. I think you could very safely look at this game and kind of be like, it's a little bit of a schedule loss, right? Some injuries and whatnot. And I think this game probably meant a lot more to the Grizzlies as well, because it was the fourth and final meeting. And the Grizzlies really didn't want to get swept by the Rockets, right? You never want to get swept by an opponent, in the regular season series. That just feels bad. So I think the Grizzlies probably wanted this one a little bit more than the Rockets did ultimately. And I'll even go so far as to say, I mentioned coaching earlier. Some of the rotations out there, like when Ime had the Fred VanVleet plus the all bench brigade lineup out there with Jock and Tate and Cam and Tari, that lineup was kind of questionable. And then you pulled out Fred VanVleet and brought back in Ime Thompson at the top of the quarter, and that lineup was kind of a train wreck too, because you didn't have anybody who could really generate consistent offense with that group. Since you didn't have your usual offensive engines or creators and Jalen and Fred and Al P out there, that lineup felt like it was really struggling to generate any kind of consistent flow at the top of the fourth quarter. And the biggest thing to me, and this is the one that bothers me the most, honestly, and this is where I'll drop it, and then we'll talk about Al P and the All-Star reserves. But I feel like they didn't use, and maybe I'm mistaken here, but I don't think they used Ime Thompson in the short roll at all in this game. And that's a dynamic that was sorely missing with no Alperen Sengun. That's one of the benefits that he brings to the table and why he's so effective as a passing big man is, you play pick and roll with Al P, you get the ball to him on the short roll in the middle of the floor, and then he can either attack or, post up or, shoot the little floater or kick it out to a shooter if they double, all those different things. You can do a lot of those same actions with Ime Thompson. We saw a lot of it last season when he stepped into the starting lineup for Alperen Sengun last year, where they made him a primary screener and he would get the ball in the short roll and then just roll straight into attacks at the rim. I don't know why that wasn't utilized at all against this Grizzlies team, where you could have Ime Thompson setting screens for Fred or for Jalen and have them just float. You know what? I take it back. They tried it one time. The final play just before halftime, where Ime Thompson set a screen for Fred VanVleet and then rolled to the rim over the top of the defense, and Fred tried to get the ball over, and he completely overshot the pass. So it happened one time that I can remember in the entire game. So I don't know why that offensive wrinkle wasn't utilized at all in this one to generate some easier opportunities, because it just felt like offensively the Rockets really struggled to generate high quality offense. And they really relied on a lot of just isolation, your turn, my turn. I'm going to beat my man and get to a spot and then shoot it. But not a lot of playmaking, not a lot of ball movement. Only 22 assists on 42 made shots, not great. So yeah, just a rough game. But I wouldn't take too much away from this one at the end of the day. Coming up, let's talk about Alperen Sengun making it to his first ever All-Star team. We'll talk about the All-Star reserve selections and a couple other things. We'll get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action with live betting all game long. You can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is so easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's the icing on the cake. Download the app or head on over to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5. And if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. It's been a long time coming, and it finally happened.
Alperen Sengun is an all-star. I'm just letting everybody here know it. The Wizard is an all-star. You heard it here first.
Tari Eason had it called last season. It took a little bit longer than we expected, but Alperen Sengun has officially been named a Western Conference All-Star reserve. Just huge honor for him, and kind of a testament to all the work that he's done. And he deserves this. He's been the Rockets' best player on this team for a season and a half now. He's worked his ass off to improve his game. Yes, the numbers this year, especially like the efficiency metrics, have taken a bit of a hit, but I think we can safely, we've talked about that a lot. It's probably because of the increased role and effort and energy output on the defensive end of things that has kind of impacted his ability to be as consistent as he was in prior years offensively. But he's really just grown into this all around, bit of a two-way force, at the end of the day. And it's great that he's gotten the recognition from his peers and from opposing coaches, right? Because those are the guys who select the All-Star reserves. And the fact that he made it in over a guy like Domantas Sabonis tells you all you need to know, right? It's not like fans voted for the reserves. These were the coaches. These are the actual people responsible for game planning on a night-to-night basis for who they're trying to stop. And teams don't have to game plan against Domantas Sabonis the way that you have to game plan against Alperen Sengun. They are two completely different players in that regard. Sengun has a much deeper offensive bag than Sabonis, and while the numbers statistically on paper for Sabonis look better than Sengun's, I think from a impact perspective, it cannot be overstated how important Alp has been to this Rockets team on both sides of the basketball. That's the distinction, is Alp is a significantly better and more versatile defender than Domantas Sabonis is. And I will 1,000% argue that with anybody who wants to argue it. That's one of the reasons Sengun's improved defense this year is one of the reasons that the Rockets have been able to maintain a top 5 defense for much of the season. He's not the sole reason. You've got a bunch of great defenders around Sengun, but he is that backline defense. He is the anchor of the defense. So incredibly happy for Alperen Sengun. He's earned it. It's been a long time coming. Where's my Sengun soundboard?
Hey, Houston fans. I am so happy.
I'm so happy like always.
Alperen Sengun, always.
Just run through a few of these.
Okay, Alperen Sengun.
Nah, it's really cool. I'm happy for Alpi. I'm happy for the Rockets. It's cool that they're getting, the recognition that they deserve as a team, as one of the best teams in the NBA this season. And looking at the rest of the Western Conference reserves, not to toot my own horn, I went 6 for 7. I was actually really proud of myself for the predictions there. The only name that I missed, they voted in James Harden instead of Kyrie Irving. So I went 6 for 7 on the other names. I had Anthony Edwards, I had Anthony Davis, had Triple J, had Alperen Sengun, had Jalen Williams, and had Victor Wembanyama selected. And the only name I got wrong was Kai. I really did think they were going to do Kyrie Irving, but you know what? The Clippers honestly have been such a sneaky good team this season relative to expectations. I myself, like many others, completely wrote them off going into the year. I really thought, okay, Kawhi's out, he's hurt, they're going to be nothing. James Harden's another year older, he's not going to be able to keep that team afloat, but they've established a good defensive culture over there, and James Harden has kept that ship sailing smoothly in the absence of Kawhi, and now they've got Kawhi back, and so that Clippers team could be a sneaky, dangerous team come this postseason. So shout out to the bearded one himself for yet another All-Star selection, this time as a reserve. But it should be a really fun All-Star team. And here's the thing is, this is the new All-Star format, right? So they'll do the little tournament. 2 teams play against each other to 40, and then the other 2 teams play against each other to 40, and then you play in the championship game. So and bear in mind too, I believe, I'm trying to remember how it exactly works. The winner, right? Yeah, okay. The winner of the Rising Stars tournament gets to face the one of the All-Star teams, either in the championship round or like they go in as, they face in one of the first rounds and they play again. So I don't know. I can't remember the exact format, and I should have looked it up before hitting record, but that's on me. But there's a possibility that we might see Ime Thompson playing against Alperen Sengun in the All-Star game. That would be a ton of fun. Ime Thompson potentially representing his Rising Stars squad, and then Alperen Sengun repping whatever team he finds himself landing on for the from the All-Star side of the bracket. But look, it's going to be a ton of fun. The Rockets have a ton of representation at NBA All-Star Weekend, and yeah, I'm excited to see where these guys go, and ultimately, can't wait to see Alp back in action. Hopefully, he'll be playing in front of the home crowd against the Brooklyn Nets on Saturday. I'm sure the Rockets will have some kind of a hype video set up for him, and I'm sure he'll go out there and want to be able to put on a show for the fans to kind of celebrate his selection to the All-Star roster. So I want your thoughts on everything we talked about. I want your thoughts on the Grizzlies loss. How are you feeling about Alp getting selected to the All-Star team? I didn't talk about the Eastern Conference reserves. We don't really care about the Eastern Conference over here. With that is going to do it. Remember, the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Drop the comments while you're there. Subscribe to the daily Locked On Rockets newsletter. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.